Okay, so working with data file formats in PowerShell. Oh, actually, I made that joke yesterday. Sorry, I get the two confused because they're very similar. What I'm going to do is sort of a whirlwind tour because half an hour isn't long when you've got a lot of stuff you want to show. Because again, there'll be a few slides to explain what it's about, and then demos. So again, thanks to our sponsors, some of which are my customers as well, which is nice. Without them, we wouldn't have this great event and those lovely mini donuts. Me, development background, 5 decades worth of it. I know I don't look old enough or sensible enough. Mostly write PowerShell for software vendors these days, and I am available for hire for PowerShell stuff and comedy events as well. I like Regex a little bit. We'll get on to Regex. A couple of caveats. This is from my own experience. For some of these things, there will be modules, but the work I do, because I have customers who then have customers using third-party modules, is a bit of a difficult subject, because you've then got to say to the customer, their customer, oh, can you put this module on these machines? And when my customer, somewhere like ControlUp, who might be managing 10,000 machines in a day, and you say to the customer, oh, can you just put this module on all these machines? They go, no. So that means most of my stuff is self-contained, which for things like Azure stuff means I use REST APIs a lot. Yeah, because you don't need any, you need knowledge of the REST API, which is always fun, but you don't need any modules. So there may well be modules, and if people know of modules for some of the stuff I'm showing, please feel free to interject. And it's probably a module to replace me as well, as I'm getting on a little bit in years. Okay, so text files. I guess we do come across text files every now and again, plain text files. Doesn't really matter here for the sake of argument whether it's ASCII or Unicode, 8-bit or 16-bit. Does a little bit when you're treating them as binary, but that's right at the end of the deck, which I never get to anyway. How many times have I ever got to the end of a deck in a presentation? I haven't even started my timer yet. That's a good start, isn't it? Right, start. Remember, guy, it's 28. Righty. So the first thing to mention, I'm not kind of really going to demo this, but there's some good stuff online about it. So we had a sort of a debate in the sort of PowerShell Twitter community. Not a mass debate, fortunately, just a few of us. You're going to be a difficult crowd, I can tell. Get content, because it's kind of generic to work with all the PS providers, registry, file system, etc., can be a bit slow. So my preferred way of reading text files, as long as, I don't know if any of you were in the previous security talk, as long as you're not in constrained language mode in PowerShell, then I use system.io.file. Well, in fact, you can call it io.file, but I tend to put the system in just to remind me that it's based in that system namespace. Then read lines will read one line at a time. Read all lines sounds like it might be a bit more efficient, but the clue's in the name. It reads all lines and then starts putting them through the pipeline. So if you've got something piped on the end of that, for each object, then it's not actually going to start read all lines until it's read the whole file. And if you're processing a 10 meg log file or a 100 meg log file, which is sort of a demonstration I'll do shortly, then that's actually going to be slower than get content. And there is a rather cool way, certainly for getting the first line, of using minus switch, which I'm going into. But this slide deck, which will be available, that's a link to that. But the thing with that is it makes it very difficult to understand. Why is he using a switch there and then a file? And it's actually to read the first line of the file. So it's quite a cool technique, but it's not very readable. A bit like this null coalescing operator that's coming in 7. Or a ternary operator, which when I was a C++ developer all those years ago, before some of you were even born, I avoided using, because again, it made the code difficult to read. Yeah. Okay. It's a bit longer to put a if then else in there, but that's a hell of a lot more readable. So now we're going to get on to Regex. So a show of hands. I'm not going to test you. Who's comfortable with Regex? Yeah. I would not claim to be an expert on Regex. We were having a conversation over dinner last night, as you do, about Regex with an Australian, and say, well, even I have to look up negative look aheads and negative look behinds, and it's like, I can't even know what they are, and it's, because I use them so infrequently. I don't use much of Regex, but I'm comfortable with what I do, and most of what I know, simple matches, which I'm going to show you, and hopefully not scare you and have you running from the room, it's actually pretty straightforward, and it's very powerful. And I've done quite a few talks, maybe, depending on feedback on this talk, I'll see if I can get a session in next year for, talking about getting people up to speed with Regex. Actually how to use it in the real world, not, this matches that and this matches that. And then, yeah. And even with Regex, as I put here, multiple regex, rather than trying to come up with one regex, which fiendish, if you know that English word, which means it's really tricky because you've got to take into account this situation and that situation. So it makes this regex horrible and you can't read it. Just use two. Yeah. If it matches this or it matches this. Yeah. It's much simpler. But this is the power of regex, and this is where it comes in. Rather than just matching stuff, is what I would say is parsing stuff, processing your text at the same time. As this $matches built-in variable, so you don't have to define it. It's a hash table that's built into PowerShell. And when I say PowerShell, I use Windows PowerShell, again, because of the way my customers work. They're not going to go to their customer and say, can you put PowerShell 7 on these 10,000 machines, please? It's not going to happen. Well, it might happen, but it's unlikely. So I have to slum it with Windows PowerShell 5.1, unfortunately, most of the time. But everything I show works in both. And we use these things called matching groups. But again, to make it understandable for anybody else who maintains your code, or for you yourself when you come back to it in 6 months and think, who wrote this, Rob? Oh, it was me. What was I matching here? I always put examples of what I'm matching in a comment right above where the regex is being used. Because when you're trying to figure it in your mind, I can see a nod here, then it really, really does help you, believe me. And I think I've got one proponent of that as well. So let's go to a demonstration-y thing. So I'm going to bring up good old ASCII, boo, hiss, VS Code, you old git, dinosaur, yeah, okay, whatever. I am going to start trying to use VS Code more. I last used it sort of 2 years ago, and it was flaky and unreliable. One thing I will show you a tip with ASCII, and VS Code might well do the same, is if I want to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I've got a clean one, ASCII that is. I'm going to kill my own process, suicide you could call it, kill minus ID $PID. Why? Because when I open it back up again, it will take me back to all the previous files I had open. Yeah, I'll get the most recent, let's use Zoom it, much underrated tool. Yeah, didn't finish or exit cleanly, therefore it's going to open up what was previously there. So if I have to restart it, that's the way I do it, yeah, rather than just killing it or clicking on the X. So kill being an alias for stop dash process. Don't use kill in scripts, although kill is one of those, at least aliases that vaguely know what it means, yeah? Whereas if you use ls or ps in scripts, it's like, unless you're a Unix Linux person, then it's what the hell's that? It doesn't bring back the script that you were working on, and I've left several open simply because I've got various examples of stuff. So whilst I try and find the right script, which does not seem to be loaded, that's good. So it's on the right, my right on the right, or your, data file formats. Thank you. Yeah, someone was paying attention. Yeah, I haven't got my glasses on. That's my excuse. Yeah. There's some stuff on the screen here. All right. Okay. So this is test code. Again, this will all be available in GitHub afterwards, but I'm going to show regex. I want you to tell me whether it scares you. I don't have to see it all. It is quite long. Yeah. Again, it's not the length. It's what you do with it, as they say. So here's the, of the regex. Come on, let's face it. Okay, so there's my regex. Put your hand up if you think that is scary. I'm not going to pick on anybody, yeah? Okay, because what I want to try and do is to explain to you why this is actually not very scary. It's just cumbersome, I think is the word. And I'm told that ChatGPT, Copilot, etc., are quite good at giving regular expressions. I'm not sure quite how good they would be for this sort of thing. But okay, let me just zoom in a bit more so I can see it. I don't know about people at the back. So a couple of important things. So this is just part. In fact, let me show you the text file I'm going to parse. So what I want to do is I've got a text file. I want to process it. This could be a log file from anything. It's this one. Just control plus doesn't work. Oh, control middle does. Okay. So there's a log file. Actually came from my vCenter at home. I keep meaning to analyze it. It was some backup problem I had. Just happened to be a text file I've got. And if you're used to looking at text log files on any OS, they're roughly similar format. Yeah. Usually a date stamp, kind of where it happened, the error level, the text, some other stuff. This looks like it's module stuff. It's in some Python, apparently some other programming language inferior to PowerShell, although that's not what my son says to me, who's also a developer. So this is what we're going to parse with a regex, yeah? Why? So that we can then process it later on. I might want to filter just on errors, or I might want to see how many of these particular errors have I got, or just generally search it. But it's just an example of a text file that you might have the need to process. So this scary regex, which isn't scary, it's just a lot of repeating components, yeah? In fact, what I'll do is it's as I told you, I put a comment above it, which is a line. My signature is 2 hashes for a comment. Why? I'm just different. I don't know. Yeah, maybe I am a bit different. But it's literally just one of the lines of that log file that I've got. So, and the way I did this, I didn't leave it to the last minute. I wasn't doing this the other night in the hotel room, honestly. Was literally to take that line, put it in double quotes in the bottom here in my code file, and then just type this minus match, and then start to build my expression. So I was doing it live. I didn't need to go to regex 101 or whatever. I was literally doing it live in the PowerShell window. I'm just matching bit by bit. So to start with, it's like, okay, I'm going to go and get this date time. Well, the easiest way to get that is, do I want to look for 4 digits and a dash and 2 digits and how many, and that sometimes can be 2 digits of milliseconds or 3 digits. Now look at it. There's a space, yeah? So I'm just going to go for a space. So, caret, start of line. This is the tricky bit that might make it look a bit scarier than it is. That is what's called a named match. A named match, basically, when we have the parentheses, the round brackets in something, that's called a matching group. Because in your matches, this matches variable I specified, I mentioned earlier, that will be returned in there. So this is how I'm basically chopping up that text as I go along. So in my matches array, the stuff in those, my matches hash table, dictionary, everything in those round brackets will be an item with an index, a key, and a hash table called date time. If I don't put the question mark less than blah stuff in, it would just be matches 0, which for simple stuff is okay. But if you've got lots of components on the line, you can see here it's a repeating, yeah. That's I've called number blurb because I haven't figured out what it is. Yeah, it looks like some sort of date. Probably the time of the event as opposed to when it was written to the log. Then a process, something or other, followed by a PID. So I've got process, I've got PID. Notice the repeating patterns. Yeah. So, and just to match that first bit, it's square brackets means any of the things in the square brackets. \s mean capital S. This is PowerShell being case sensitive for once. But only with special characters. So if I was matching PID, which I'm doing there, because PID is the regular expression to match PID, yeah, it doesn't get much simpler than that, then it would also match it with lowercase. But with these special characters, the things with a backslash, a backslash capital S means no spaces, yeah? So it's basically saying everything from the start of line, that's like caret or hat or whatever you call it in your language, everything up to what there isn't a space followed by a space, yeah? So basically it's going everything up to, and plus means 1 or more. Star means 0 or more. You're probably used to dot star matching everything. Dot means 0 or more. The star means 0 or more of previous, and dot matches anything. Whereas plus means 1 or more. Subtle difference between 0 and 1, yeah? As in, the star means it's optional. The plus means that it has to be at least 1 there. So I'm just saying, yep, matches it, space. And it could be more than 1 space, probably isn't. But again, I'm trying to future-proof it. And that's it. And then I start with a square bracket. But guess what? Because we're using square brackets for this, a square bracket is a special character, so I'm escaping it. If in doubt, escape it. Yeah, everything, is this a special character or not? stick a backslash in front. If it's not a special character, it won't matter at all. And that's it. That's that component. And then I just do the same. So that's all it is repeating bits. So how do I identify it? Again, here, I actually use digits. \D is a digit. But I could have used the same again. Yeah, \S plus \S, as in everything which without a space. So it's actually pretty easy. And because I build it up bit by bit as I go along, I add the groups bit I add later. So when I'm building it up, I don't put a date, time, and a number blurb and a process in. I just get the regex. And when I've got the regex working for the whole line, that's when I go in with the matching groups. So if we actually run that, so we've got this code here. So what it's going to do, and then we see the line below. Again, this is something, if you were in my talk yesterday, because I come from a C and C++ background, started writing device drivers for Unix. In fact, when I had green screens, just like this is why I choose this color scheme. Back in the 1980s, then you have to explicitly declare your variable types. None of this implicit stuff in PowerShell. So I always declare things, which does help spot and find runtime errors, and sometimes compile time, well, not necessarily compile time, but static errors as well. So I'm using this read lines text file is an argument to the script. So I can just do an F5 on it. I'm using a where object, where $_ refers to the line. So each line gets passed through the pipeline. I've used iMatch. I don't need to use iMatch, but if you saw my talk yesterday, I use things IEQ, INE when it's strings to show that it really is. The I means case insensitive. Because I come from C++, a number of times I've been bitten by case sensitivity issues. I just make things deliberately and explicitly case insensitive. And then, because this technique from here on down, you see this line 39? So this code will be the same for regardless of your text file. Yeah? So your regex will be different for the different types of file that you might want to parse. But if that's similar-ish sort of format, then you can take mine and then just change it as needed, testing it as you go along. Like I say, take one line from the filing and go, does it minus match or minus I match? And then that regex, and you have that in literal mode in a string. Change it as you need it. But from then on in, everything else I use to convert it to objects is generic. So all these date, time, number, blurb, process. What I've done here, as I'll explain in a minute, is use a technique that will basically go and parse this regular expression string. Guess what? With a regular expression. Well, regular expression, it's like Inception. To actually go and get these named matches out of it. So that, if you actually figured out what this one was, rather than you calling it numbery blurb, you called it actually something sensible, then if you changed up here, it would actually be in your properties later on. So let's go and run those lines to define the regex and to read the file. In fact, I think if I do an F5, that might be better. No, that's the next demo already. Yeah, go away. Oh, I didn't put a break in. Yeah, well done. Oh! Yeah, that got to there. Let me run that again. Actually put a break in this time. Yeah, you're familiar with breakpoints in development environments? If you're not, VS Code's got it as well. You are missing out massively. Right-click, toggle breakpoint, or F9, same in VS Code. You can stop the code execution at that point, but as we'll see down here at the bottom, if you can see its bottom, not mine, then you've actually got the DBG prompt. Because we're stopped here, and we can now start to look at variables. Yeah. So lines is just lines of the file. Oh, I didn't show you that bit on the end of the lines of file. Thanks to this. I remember when 1920 by 1080 was a huge resolution. We used to have to slum it with 640, 480. Because what happens is once I've matched it, I convert the matches, this hash table I said, into a custom object. That's kind of a clever bit. Remove zero. If you ever use matches, zero of any match is the whole string that's matched. So if we actually look at what the last value of $matches was in here, $matches. Because it's been processed up there, because it's a hash table, you can use a remove method. Then zero isn't here, but zero would be the whole line because that's what matched the regular expression. But you see, these are the named matches. Well done, guy. Come on, you can do it. Yeah, so there we see numbery blurb. Was that named match? Process, was that named match? Notice they're not in order, yeah? Because this is a hash table. It's not an ordered hash table, it's just a hash table. Hash tables aren't ordered by default. But this is now an object, yeah? So this has got all those bits of that first line of the file. No, it'd be the last line of the file, won't it? Because it's processed the whole thing by now. Is that the right one? Yeah, okay, good. I'm glad somebody's paying attention. I tend to drift off because my voice bores me. So yeah, that's the last line. So that's the last one that it matched, and those are the matches. So those are now stored in, you see this groups. This is where I was using so there's two ways we can do matches in PowerShell. We do minus match, as we were doing, or a minus I match, but we can also use the regex .NET type, because when we're doing multiple matches on the same line, the built-in stuff isn't very good. Sometimes you have to use select string. So this will get all the multiple matches. Now that's slightly more fiendish, perhaps, than the others, but it's actually pretty straightforward. Because if we, again, I've got the example is actually in the regex string. What are we doing? Right. Question mark is a special character. So I'm looking for a question mark. I'm looking for a less than, which I've escaped. Yeah. I'm then looking for another matching group, so hence the parentheses. W is any alphabetical character. Date, time, number blurb, process. Yeah. Followed by a closing greater than sign, and that's it. So I'm looking for matches of that thing in the string. And what that's done, and that puts it into that groups variable. No, we ain't going to get onto HTML, but in fact, if I do that and pipe it through format table, no, if I do the previous command and pipe it through rather than CLS pipe through format table, yep, clears the table and puts clears the screen and puts the results through. Yeah, idiot. You can see these are the values that it's got. Yeah, it's gone and got all the values out, and those are actually stored within these groups within here. So I don't even need to process that. You know, you think, oh yeah, I'll just do a quick regex replace on that. No, that it's actually already stored it, a bit like it has in that matches variable. So the property names, which I've got out here using a calculated property. I love my calculated properties. If you ever see any of my tweets, which aren't terrible dad jokes, then this is a calculated property. So it's a small hash table with a name and an expression, and all I'm doing is going to this groups thing here and getting the one that matches. So what that means then, if I look at property names, if I can type the letters in the correct order, then I've got the property names in the correct order. Remember, they weren't in order in the hash table. But because it parses left to right, then I've got all the property names here. Yeah. So now if we then go and run the next line, you're familiar with the outgrid view? It's one of my favorite PowerShell commandlets because it's a great way to visualize data. I will zoom it in. Then you can see we've got all of the properties. So if we go back to, this is make that a little bit bigger. You're not going to be able to, well, in fact, yeah, I'll bring the Notepad++ up and then zoom the whole lot. Go to the start, because that's where it is. Oh, I've lost one already. Person, that is. Now, notice a numbery blurb actually is empty, because I'd got this working, and then it wasn't working for the whole file. And I spotted that some of this numbery blurb was empty at the start of the log, but not at the end. So I made the bit in here, in the match, optional. How do I do that? Just stick a question mark at the end and it makes it optional. So you can see here, I've got a match between what's in, so these are the objects coming out of PowerShell. Yeah. And this is the line as it is in the log file itself. So you can see I've got the estimating the backup size there as the text. So all these, I can group on these, sort on these, do whatever I want. And you're like, well, I don't want to do it on a log file. Well, yeah, this is just an example of a file. As long as it's a consistent format, you can parse it with Regex. Yeah. So, yeah, good job. I've prepared loads of demos because I don't have time for all of them. So next one I want to show you, going back to the slides very briefly, is, again, all that code will be up on GitHub. Certainly within the next year, I hope. I don't rush into these things, but I'll get it up as soon as I can. I want to put as many comments in as I possibly can, to help people. That's why how I write code, to help me as well. And the other main one is Delimited. If something's delimited, now you might say that file was space delimited. Well, it kind of was and kind of wasn't. It got space delimited up to a point, and then there were spaces in errors and things like that. So I decided to use the Regex approach for that, because if something is delimited, typically, could be CSV, although obviously the Dutch don't understand what CSV really means. Yeah, C is for comma. Yeah. What do the Dutch use for CSVs? No, semicolon. Yeah. That caught me out the first few times. I was doing some work for a Dutch company. But we're not just talking comma separated or semicolon separated. Anything which is going to be a separator which isn't in your normal text, or if it's in your normal text, it's escaped by whatever mechanism, then we can parse it here. So a typical one that I've done over the years as my job as a consultant, because I was an EUC consultant. Well, next year I'll celebrate 30 years of doing that stuff in the the Citrix, VMware, AVD space, is IIS log files, which are space delimited. If I should have an example of one I prepared earlier. So there's a typical IIS log file that's come from a Citrix server somewhere. I can't remember. Oh, ControlUp's web server. Just a company I happened to. I shut down my lab at home, so I didn't have access to all my stuff. So I quickly got a Citrix session and I went on. So you see what it is. These are actually space delimited. Yeah. So, and at the end of the file, we have more information, but the field headers are actually built in as well. So sometimes you'll get a CSV where there's no headers. Again, you can still use PowerShell with import CSV because you can tell it the headers, which generally I wouldn't hard code. I would just make a parameter to the script so I can change them. Hard coding is devil's work. So the first three lines I want to ignore. The extra problem we get is if you restart IIS during when the log file is running, it will create these lines again. So whatever mechanism you use has to take that into account, which mine does. So you can see we've got a date, we've got a time, an IP address, a method, the URI or URL, whatever it's called, port, and various other things. So what we can do is turn that into objects again, so that I can, information in here is more interesting on the right hand. So I use the word interesting in a technical sense rather than a socially acceptable sense. I wouldn't suggest talking about this at parties. The stuff at the end is more interesting when you're analysing what's going on. The status codes, 302 a redirect, 400s being, not found, 200s being okay, 500 plus being, back-end error, those sorts of things. So we can group on them. We also have times, how long did it take to the request? These are times in milliseconds. So you might want to see what's your average? Have we got a really slow one? Someone said, 9 o'clock. I was having problems getting onto Citrix. And you go in and you look and why are the 15,000 millisecond response times then? 15 seconds. Yeah, that's not right. And again, it's much easier to analyze. I mean, you can put it into Excel if you like Excel, but I don't like Excel. So what we'll do is we'll bring that in as a space delimited file. So let's go back to the script code. And again, I've got one I prepared earlier. In fact, I'm still at a breakpoint, so I'll carry on from this breakpoint. So today's IIS log file is actually a parameter to the script. You could, they're in a standard place, but never hard code anything. Don't think, it's going to be in C, INET pub, whatever. go and find where it actually defines that in the registry or in the IIS PowerShell modules, if you've got access to those. So here I've actually, because this is my Windows 11 ARM laptop, did I mention that? I've actually stuck it in my OneDrive. It's just as well I did that for my demo files after what happened yesterday. What it actually does is uses a get date, because the date format, if you know IIS log, who knows IIS log files? Well, you lucky people. It's U_EX, year, month, day. Yeah. So this line actually gets the date, it gets current day's log file. Yeah. Because it uses that string, passes it to format, and each of these, fortunately, EX doesn't mean anything, but the YYMMDD does. And the G is a special character as well for dates. So I escape it. So this means I don't have to I don't have to look at each individual bit. I don't have to look at the year, the month, and build it up. It just goes in one go. So if that exists, the test path, I've used to get content. That's slow, guy. Yeah, but I'm just showing you it worked. Oh, a regular expression again. Start a line. Is it a digit or is it hash fields? Yeah. So the pipe is an OR. I'm not using as a match group, but when you're using an OR, you have to use round brackets. Yeah. So that says, does the line start with a number or hash fields? So that gets rid of the first few lines of the file. So it's just going to get the header line, because I want the header line so that I can actually get the headers for the columns. So if it was different for different languages or something like that, I don't think they are, but it's a good cross-section of languages, I guess, in here. If it was language specific, there again, this doesn't hard code those values, or if they change them at some point, because you can actually change a logging format and so on. So if
you change it and restart IIS, you get two different.
Oh, right, okay. Sorry, I failed. My script doesn't support that. If you decide to change your logging format partway through the day, I failed you. I'm sorry. Session over. But as long as you use the same logging format for the same day, then for each of the lines we've matched, I get rid of that hash fields. I think I've actually neglected to put an example of the regex that I'm matching in here, which is a bit poor by my standards. I shall have stern words with myself later. So we actually get rid of that hash fields bit, because from there on in, those are the names of the columns that I want. Yeah. So we get rid of that. Fat fingers, not just your fingers, guy. Then we do the convert from CSV with the minus delimiter of a space. Now this is this where object bit. You think, well, date not equal to date. What the hell? That's the bit to stop those repeating lines. I said if you restart IIS, you get those repeating header lines, which start with date. So if my line starts with date, then I don't want to know about it. Then I do some bits and pieces, because in the log file, do you remember the date and the time were separate? So that's not a valid date time as far as PowerShell is concerned, because what I want to do, I want you to be able to search this and say where the date's greater than 8 o'clock but less than 10 o'clock, that sort of stuff, and use real dates. So, or any other dried fruit you want for that matter. So what I actually do is convert that date and time to a proper timestamp. But notice what I'm doing here. This is a technique we use in calculated properties, because you've got a script block in a calculated property. Yeah, you've got the curly brace. So if you define a variable in here without the script colon scope in front of it, it only makes it local to that script block. So if I use it later on as well, because noted all times in IIS logs, as I'm sure you know, are UTC, universal time, not local time. So currently, if I was doing a log here, they would be 2 hours behind. So actually in that log file, to be extra helpful, because if the user says, oh, I was having trouble getting into Citrix at 9 o'clock and they were here, you'd actually be looking at the logs at 7 o'clock, or the log times at 7 o'clock. Hopefully you weren't working at 7 o'clock. Unless you're 24. Well, I'll stop there. So rather than converting the date time twice, because I'm an efficient programmer, Then I've saved that to a script scope variable, so it's outside of the scope of this curly brace. So that's now at the script level. So that, as long as I haven't reset it by the next loop, I can then say to local time. Yeah. So it just saves time. There wouldn't be any problem with doing that whole thing again and then sticking it to local time at the end. But I guess it's probably my background as a C++ programmer for many, many decades, is I try and be as efficient as possible. Inside a loop, try and do as little calculation as possibly can. I then get the rest of the fields because I'm only treating a few, especially. Most of the rest of the fields in it, I'm using exactly the same. And by the way, this is on paste bin as well. So one of the references in the slides is to my paste bin, which again is Guy R. Leech. I've got a lot of one-liners in there. Why don't I use gists? Because I didn't know about gists when I started on paste bin. So I do a lot of one-liners on there because before I bought Twitter Premium, I couldn't get long tweets in, so some of my script lines wouldn't fit. So star means, because we're doing a select object minus property, so I'm adding some. But I'm also getting the rest of them that I'm not interested in. Then remember that I said duration on the end in milliseconds? That's also a text field. So if you just don't do any post-processing, you sort on that, you'll do an alphabetical sort on numbers. Yeah. So all the tens, hundreds, thousands, followed by the twos, 20, yeah, it doesn't work. So again, all I'm doing is taking the time taken value and casting it to an integer. And then I'm losing the ones which I've processed, yeah? So I've taken the date and the time and converted them to a real date time. I've taken the time taken and converted that to a real number. So I actually exclude those fields, yeah? So it's less cluttered. And then I just stick it into a grid view. So if I do an F5, lo and behold, I now get, would you zoom it again? Yeah? So you can see there's my date time, local time, so that's an hour ahead. Various other fields. Then if we go to the end of the file, so see, tripping over the trip hazard. Oh, I could sue there, couldn't I? So we can see we've got the duration columns. So again, in a grid view, I love grid views. So for instance, we can say, let's add criteria. Let's say the SC status does not contain 200. Yeah, so this is grid view built in. If you don't use it already, I would suggest you do in PowerShell. It's a great way to visualize data, events, all sorts of things. Then I've taken out everything that was a 200, so successful. But with it being a grid view, what I could also do if I want to, I can simply just sort on duration. And because that's now a real number, rather than a pretend number, which it would be when it's text. Did I click on it or did I miss? Oh, yeah, I missed. Oh, I've sorted it the wrong way up. We don't know what the fastest are, because the fastest will be 0. Yeah, so the slowest were 331 milliseconds. So this log sample, I can't remember if it was a whole day or not. Yeah, it's not struggled really with any requests. 300 milliseconds isn't a bad time for a request. But what you could do because what we've got now is we've got these in objects. I just happen to put them out in a grid view. But I could have just assigned that to, rather than putting the grid view there, I could have just assigned that to a variable, and then I'd have an array, which I could do all sorts of things on. Yeah, I could look for data and I could group it. Grouping's great for, in fact, let's do that. So run out of time for the other demos. I always put loads of content in and think, well, let's see how far we get, rather than rehearsing, trying to get it in for 30 minutes. So the more I can get, the better. Well, I think so. Anyway, you might say the less I get in, the better. But perhaps if I stop it, the script and the talking maybe, I will allow time for questions. There'll be a minute at the end. Why can't I stop the script? Well, I was trying. Yeah, I was trying to do a Shift F5. Oh, because I've got the grid view up. That's why. Get rid of the grid view because I put a minus weight on the end of the out grid view. It weights. Yeah, because by default I've actually put it in the background, so you can carry on with the script. There's pros and cons. I did that in as a lazy man's breakpoint, and then I forgot and then made myself look like a fool. But I'm used to that. It's fine. I'm very good at, very practiced. So what we'll do here then is we'll say $IIS Can't spell, not that it really matters. And we'll stick a in there. And we'll stick a breakpoint there. We'll remember to save it. It's always useful. And we'll F5 it. And that was the previous one, wasn't it? Yeah. That was the log file. Again, it's all in the same script. I did set an environment variable to be able to say don't do that bit, but I don't need to do that. So now we've got $IIS, if I can spell it. Got count. What did I do wrong? Oh, I put it in the wrong place, haven't I? Stupid boy. Well, I was actually hoping to see somebody paid attention. At least one person paid attention. Now I've got to stop it again. Sign the variable up there. Silly boy. Yeah. I signed it partway through the loop. It's like, idiot. Yeah. Normally this is a one-liner. If you look in Pastebin, it's a one-liner. But I split it out to make it more readable. Because that's what you should do in a script. You should make them more readable. Everybody goes, oh, look, it's great one-liner. Not in a script, please. It just makes it very difficult to understand. You've got to be scrolling across. I've got a 5K monitor at home, like in 49-inch. I can recommend them, although I'm a third one because I broke two of them, but less said about that, the better. So let's run that again.
I think you need to change the line so it's...
Line 77. Yes, very true. Well spotted. Again, I love leaving these little things in to make sure people are paying attention and you're doing very well. Yeah. Well, this is not 25 degrees. Although I'm sweating, it doesn't feel like it's 25 degrees like it was in the other room. How's that? Is that slightly better? Yeah. But even a supposed professional, and I can call myself a professional because I get paid for writing PowerShell. We'll make mistakes as well, yeah? Well, I don't know about you guys. You might be perfect, but I certainly ain't. My wife keeps reminding me. Right, so now we should have, finally, I've made it a lot harder than it should be. Yeah, I've got an IIS variable. So what I could do now, for instance, is, let's look at the first record, proper element. Yeah, we can see, in fact, let's Control R gets rid of the code pane. You can see all those properties. So let's say I'm going to group it on status. Yeah, so $IIS, bang, pipe, group, SC-status. So then I can see, well, how did I do? I got 852 401 errors. Perhaps I ought to look at what the 401 errors are. They're probably looking for favicon.icode, to be honest, my experience with troubleshooting Citrix. But yeah, these are the sorts of things we can start to do. And because we've got real dates and times, we can start writing scripts to automatically process these if you want to, because we're now dealing with objects, because we've used regex to split the file up. So we can look for anomalous behavior, or I can say, let's have a look, IIS, where, in fact, no, let's clear the screen so you don't have to crane, $IIS, where, SC-status greater than or equal to 400. And we'll just pipe that through a measure for now, because that's going to come out with quite a few things, I would imagine. Notice I've not put the curly braces around, a feature of PowerShell 3 and above, where I can just use a single property. You could still put open curly braces $_, but if you're doing a lot of processing, that's actually slower. Yeah, this can be faster, but you can only use it for one property. So if you've got to say if it's this and this, or this or this, then you have to go back to using the curly braces. Because actually where object, just going off at a tangent like I typically do, if you didn't realize it already, actually takes arguments. Yeah. So that when you've got curly braces, you're actually not typing in minus filter script, because what I should have put in there is actually where minus property. Because so many people aren't used to that. If I put where minus property, people go, what's that? Yeah. So that's the one time I don't use named parameters. But most of the rest of the time, even with write output and write verbose, I use named parameters because you should. It's good practice. Yeah. So I know I've got 1,270 events where the status is at, and I could group them by time or whatever else. Right, I'll stop, shut up, because I know there's a question there. Where is just where is things like these trousers? It's also a town in England. No, where is just an alias for where object. But if you're in my talk yesterday, there is also a where method. Yeah? So if we do a $IIS get member rather, or is it going, do I need a -4? So is it because it's a simple array, it doesn't have it? Sorry. It doesn't have it, sorry. But if you use some of the .NET collections like the generics that we should do, then they have a .where method, and you can use that. And typically that is faster than using where object. That's generally one of the kind of golden rules, even though PowerShell is supposedly pipeline based, pipe this to this to this. Actually, where you can, avoiding pipelines can make stuff quicker. Yeah. So I never pipe to out-null, for instance. Yeah. Because that needs to set up a pipe and then chuck stuff so it just disappears. Yeah. So I actually avoid pipes where possible, but I do a lot of piping. Yeah. Because if you're then going to start assigning everything to variables and then using it on the next line, it's great for debugging because pipelines can also be a pain debugging, but then it can make your memory overhead much bigger, if nothing else, which is fine if you're dealing with 10 or 100 objects. But if you're dealing with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, then it makes quite a difference. Speaking to somebody yesterday who was having problems with running out of memory with their processing, so I gave them some tips for that. Any other questions? Observations? Yes, sir.
The script, there was some extra line with timestamp.
Timestamp.
The scripts, timestamp.
This? Oh, yes, because what I'm doing there is I'm assigning it. Yeah, so I'm setting the variable so I can use it in the other calculated property, and there I'm actually outputting it as part of this calculated property. Yeah, because there, assigning the variable there has no output. So if I didn't have that script timestamp on, that date time calculated property would actually be empty because I hadn't output anything to the pipeline for that object. So that actually outputs what I've just set, but I do it do it twofold so that I can then use that same variable without having to do the conversion, because there is some cost in terms of CPU with converting that string to a date time. So I can then use that same variable there. But yeah, no, good question, good spots as well. It's nice when people are actually looking at the code rather than going, particularly when it's the last session of the day. Any other questions? I'll be hanging around at the end anyway, so you can come and ridicule me if you want. No? Okay, we'll call it a day then. Thank you very much.